Between school, your friends, and social media, answers are everywhere. But where can you find the truth? Welcome to the Well StudentCast. We're asking for a friend so you don't have to.
What's up, party people? We are back at the Well StudentCast asking questions for a friend so you don't have to. My name is Brent, and I'm here with my friend.
Ka-ayo, and I'm glad that we are here. We are back. It is fall season. I praise the Lord. No more that Fresno fake fall. We are in it, and I'm so grateful. Granted, I am still drinking iced coffee, but it's just like ice cream. You can have it in any cold weather, you know?
Nice. We also have some friends here drinking coffee
We
with us.
do.
I'm Mallory.
What's up?
And I'm James.
Let's go. You guys might remember them from a previous podcast way back in season 1. Definitely go check it out. It was really good.
I think it was like how to have a godly relationship in high school, Q&A style.
I love that.
But we kind of were talking, we were like, we haven't talked about relationships in a while. So
Honestly.
we should bring back our friends that became our relationship expert
yes,
crew.
they are the gurus, and we're glad that they are here. Honestly, we just enjoy their company, and we have a great time when we talk about it. And so
good.
But yeah, that kind of hits us. We're heading towards the season where we're back in really all that's in, like in front of our mind is relationships.
Well, it's the
Pumpkin
holidays. Everyone's trying to
patch.
find their person, go
Yeah.
down Christmas tree lane
Yes.
together. But we've had some friends asking like, hey, if I'm trying to find this person, what do I look for? And so we're going to do a 2-part little series.
That's cool.
Of what do we look for first in a guy
Yes.
for the ladies. And then our next episode coming out in 2 weeks is going to be what do I look for in a girl if you're a gentleman listening.
Yep.
And if you're listening to this one about what do I look for in a guy and you are a guy, then you're listening with the lens of like, hey, do I have these character traits in my life right now?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to be doing. And then ladies, for the next one, that's what we'll be processing as well. But so we just want to kind of open up the table and the floor and being like, hey, like as our students is like being like, they're being like, hey, I think I want to go and date somebody. What should they be looking for? What's our first one?
Should we backtrack and start, Mal? I know you had a point of like, before they're even looking at those traits, where do they need to start first?
Yeah. I think a disclaimer is I think there needs to be some sort of like self-awareness first with like your own struggles and maybe like why you're looking for a relationship. So I think like I know for me, especially in high school, like I had a really deep desire to be loved and accepted, which like isn't a bad thing, right? Like we all want to be loved and accepted. But it really caused me to compromise on like morals and even just like what I knew was like honoring to the Lord in that time, just to be loved by a boy, you know? And so I think in some ways before you even start kind of thinking through like what to look for, or even in yourself, like if I'm someone who is dateable, just being able to kind of have that self-awareness of even like, what do I struggle with? And even taking that of saying like, if this is really hard for me and I, you know, if this is an idol in my life and I'm going to choose that over the Lord, then maybe it's stepping back and not dating in this time period, whatever. So.
Yeah, I think that was the best thing that I ever did was to take a step back from the dating world after getting into it with little to no knowledge. That's certainly not having any context around who I was looking for, other than I wanted it to be a godly person. But even at that time in my life, it was always like, well, she could have the intentions of being godly, but not necessarily have all the traits. But I could fix her. That's not the case, right? So I think the best thing I ever did in my relationship life was draw circles around myself, take a step back 2-3 years, and just kind of like figure out who I was.
Yeah,
because you know, between the ages of 15 and 24, like that's a really hard time. You don't even know who you are, what you like about somebody, what you like about yourself, what you don't like about yourself, and how that other person can, you know, fit in the puzzle.
Yeah, and coming to a place where you like fully believe that like the Lord is sufficient just in Himself, like not like Lord, like you're sufficient once there's someone else in the picture. Like if you're sitting in that place expecting someone else to come in and bring worth to your life, it's not the time. But we want to start with saying that kind of disclaimer. James and Mallory just gave some really good points in that. And so start there, open up the circle to like mentors or people in your community to be like, hey, do you see anything in my life that points to that I'm looking for a relationship out of like just for my own self or filling something in my own life? And then if you get to the point where you're like, okay, I think I'm ready, or maybe I'm not ready yet, but I want to know what I would look for in the future. Now we're going to kind of shift gears into what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think let's dive in. So it sounds like I feel like the first thing that we probably want is they have a good reputation, right?
Yeah.
This idea that like we're trusting their character, that in all the spaces and places and spheres of influence that they're consistent in who they are. Because otherwise then it would be really hard for us to like trust, how they would lead. If they're different all the time, then it's like, oh, how do I know I'm being the actual person in this relationship, right? I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's really important because if you are like just thinking back through different girls who have had relationships, if they were really excited to share, like obviously it's like a scary thing to kind of actually say like, I like this person or whatever. But if they're telling their friends like, hey, I like this guy, what do you think? Right. And all the girls are like, oh my gosh, yes, he's such a great guy. Like he's awesome or whatever. That's obviously a really good sign versus if you feel like you need to like hide who you're interested in and even hide dating or, if you are dating, like you can't hang out with any of your friends, not because they're jealous, like that's a whole other different thing, but because your friends don't approve of them, then it's kind of calling into question, like, well, does he even have a good reputation? What's his character actually really like? If you don't feel like you can be open and honest with who you're dating.
James, from a guy's perspective, like if there is a guy that has like a bad reputation or reputation of like, oh, they don't treat girls great, like what would you say to a girl that's being like, oh, but maybe it's different with me, or like even to the guy being like, I do have a bad reputation, like kind of where to go from there?
Oh boy. So the guy has a bad reputation and thinks that she can still date the girl. Yeah, I think that from the guy's perspective, it really comes back to that guy's character and the group of friends that he has around him, right? The support system he's got at home, and if he has people in his life speaking truth into him. So like, I can shout out my sophomore group, Buchanan kids, because I have a really good group of guys. They all lean on each other really, really well. They're all intimately aware of everything that's going on. Almost to the second, like this generation of people is just so like instantaneous information. And so I think that when there is somebody that is slipping off in their relationship world and you have a community of people coming alongside you, speaking into that, saying, hey, bro, I don't think that is something that you should be doing. X, Y, or Z, however that looks. So that's kind of where that's at.
Yeah, that's good. Which brings us kind of our next one that you want to look for. Girls like looking for a guy that has good community around them. Because to James's point, if there is reputation stuff going on or things, that would be something that you would want to look for and be like, okay, but do they have good community that's speaking into and walking this out with them? And so, how does that play out? Why should they look for that? Why can that get in the way if that's not there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like just thinking about my own life or the girls that I've had in life group, you kind of start to become who you're around, And so if you have a community of friends who are not walking with the Lord, and it's going to be really easy to be influenced by that. And when you do have a good community who is not perfect, but they're trying, they're walking with the Lord, and they're being honest and open about things that they're struggling with, and you feel like you can talk through things, that's going to really be a huge win in a relationship, knowing that like that guy has solid friends that are going to challenge him and call him out, when he's being dumb and not making good choices. And just to be able to be around people who are going to encourage them towards the Lord, which is like also what all of us need that, it's not just for guys, but all of us need that.
Yeah. And there's a thing in that where I feel like in our own desires, we're like, no, I want to be their whole world. Like, oh my gosh, like I want to date a guy and him be like, you're everything to me, whatever. Sounds great in theory. And then play it out. That's actually really hard. Like for them to not have anyone else, because then that's all on you. And we were not created to be all things for all people. And so if a guy, if you're interested in a guy and you would be his whole world, maybe it sounds great, but then play that out in a couple months and that's going to be really exhausting.
Yeah, and I've seen that work itself in different ways too, like in my own life or with people that I know that are married. If you have no friends in your life as the man or the woman, that creates a great strain on the relationship, just because that person is so codependent upon the other person to be able to do anything.
Yeah.
So like, in my own life, I can just give easy examples. Like I'm able to go golfing. It takes a tremendous amount of time, but my wife understands it because she also has friends and she goes and gets her nails done. Like it's just kind of a back and forth thing. If you don't have that and you can't outlet other places, like I love my wife, she's amazing, but if I can't get away and just be with the guys and be one of the boys for an afternoon, like that sounds really cliche. And Saturdays are for the boys, super stupid, but like that's kind of a real thing. Like it helps separate, and then you just naturally like, you know what? I've spent too much time with these guys. These guys are idiots. I need my wife. She's gracious and compassionate and all these things that men typically aren't, right? Just kind of natural way that God made us.
Well, I think it's also good to kind of what both of your points are saying. The idea is that like they need, like for the guy in question here, he needs to have community. So you're not the sole purpose of processing from hearing, because then that would actually be very dangerous for that. Also, too, you guys end up in like a feedback loop. So there has to be outside perspectives in. Two, the idea that relationships grow sometimes with some like distance, right? Like when I'm out of a situation,
makes the heart grow fonder.
It's very true. When I'm out of a situation, I can appreciate, the other person. Like I can appreciate my wife more, even when I spend more time with her. But even when I'm away, I'm like, oh wow, like I'm almost get this idea of gratitude comes back, right? And so I also think too with like community, the idea a solid guy needs to have a really good community. I think that's really good because then that means that it's not just the community. It's does the guy actually listen to his community?
Yeah, that's so good.
Right? Because like I've experienced that in my own life and even just like multiple students and friends where it's like they probably have the best community on the planet. They have good mentors and stuff like that. But if they're not honest in the first place, or they are perceiving some kind of fake thing, or they're not willing to listen, then that goes back to reputation and character, right? So I think they all build on each other and they need to be working well.
Well, it sounds like just having humility.
Yeah.
Like at some level of humility.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, and for the girls listening, that the guy's doing that on his own without you pushing him towards that.
Yeah.
Like that's already established. And I think if we're operating, again, this is a stereotype. This doesn't mean this is all the time, but typically it's probably, guys, you speak into this, but it's probably easier almost for guys to talk about feelings and like process things in their life to a girl, like than their guy friends sometimes. Cause it's like girls, at least for me, I'm like, I am wired where I'm like, I want to care for someone. I want to be like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, let's talk about this, whatever. I want to take care of you, whatever. And guys don't necessarily feel like it's not as natural for them to do that for each other. And so they can't find that only in you though. Like they have to be willing to enter into that space with guy friends.
Yeah, that's so true. And thankfully, like I think that at least I have such a small sample size of what this generation is, and that sounds really bad because I'm not that much older than them, but like they do a much better job of sharing their emotions. When I was in their position, I remember feeling like I cannot share this with my friends because I'm going to get blasted. They're gonna be like, you feel what? You're sad? Why? Get over it, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think that that's a really important thing too.
That is so sad.
It's tough being a guy.
Yeah.
You guys take it easy on us, okay?
Guys, you're doing great. You're doing so good.
Killing it. And then for the guy that's hearing this, it's like if you're like, wow, my reputation isn't maybe the greatest. I made some silly choices, and I don't know if I have the great friend group right now. I think this is a good wake up moment. Being okay, it needs to start there. You know, so this is not to bash you, but at least it's where to start.
Totally. And what you just said was like having humility.
Yeah.
So Mal said it, like humility would be a great trait to look for. And then you just said like even recognizing if that's where you're coming at, that takes humility to say. And so I'm throwing this one in there, but I think third trait I would say ladies looking for in a guy is humility, which comes out in different ways. But how do you guys see that playing out in health in a relationship?
Well, I think piggybacking off of the humility and community, like if you are able to get to a place of humility, then you can go to maybe you can't share it with your buddies, but maybe you have that trusted mentor in your life, your dad, your coach, your teacher, whoever that might be, and you can share with those people because generally they've experienced a lot more life, right? And they can speak into your life from a perspective of, yeah, I've been through that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see that. And, you know, from a younger person's perspective, you probably are more, you know, willing to accept what an older, grayer, less haired person has to say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grayer.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a little gray.
Dang.
I know.
Well, it's true though. It's true. Because also like someone who's a little bit older, has a little more seasoned, they can be like, hey, look, you might not see this. I remember not seeing it myself. And here's some of the pitfalls you could be walking through without even knowing. We are great convincers of, like, we can convince ourselves of anything, you know?
Totally.
So I agree, having humility, being like, I might not see everything. What do you see? And then being like, I'm also getting this from a trusted person that I know loves me enough to say the harder things, even though I might not want it, right? So
And that is like so attractive too. If they're, I mean, I don't know how you feel, but if they're like, I took this serious enough and cared enough to like seek out someone else's who's like wiser than me advice to like handle this situation. Not that the girl necessarily has to know that's what happened, but like, I don't know, that does like demonstrate care too. And then that the priorities are straight where it's like, I want to honor the Lord first. This is someone who I know loves the Lord more than they love me. And so that's why I sought out to like talk through this situation. I don't know. I think that's good.
I just keep thinking what you said, KO, about the guy who's maybe listening who like doesn't feel like this is him, you know? And I think I feel like it's such a miss if we don't encourage that guy to reach out and even just say like, we're not asking for perfection here. And if you feel like this is something you do, even the desire to want to change and be different is so good. And so just taking like the next step, whether, you know, reaching out, we've got Student Regen, plug for that.
So good.
But I think, I think encouraging just that guy or girl, right, who's just like, oh, you know, I want to change, but I don't know how. And just not letting the shame of that, of what they've done or whatever's in their past or what they're currently doing, to feel like they are too damaged or too broken to like be healed from the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, like no one's ever too far gone. So I think just a little side note of that, of like, good. we want you to find good community and we want you to have a relationship with the Lord because we believe that God is the only one who can heal us and make us whole. Right. And so, so if that's you in this, like, you're not alone and we care about you.
That's good.
That's good now.
That's really good. Okay, I think one I want to throw out there, we can actually push back on this one, but I think another thing, ladies, if you're looking for someone to date, I would say maybe let's not look for anyone that's necessarily a project. Yeah. Right?
But I pushed back on this. What? No, that's so
we
good.
can fix it, KO.
But the idea that not necessarily that he is perfect. Right? But I would probably say it in general. I would just like describe this person as a healthier person. I think that's a lot to unpack, but I just don't necessarily feel like we should find someone that's like, you know what, I can save him, and that is the one we're looking for. You know, I feel like someone that ends up being like almost not necessarily independent, but necessarily the idea that he's already dependent on the Lord first and foremost, right? So. I think that's just one I want to throw out there. Maybe it's a freebie, you know, just
that seems like a freebie.
+1 here.
It's good. It's good.
That's great. Okay, cool. Great. I'm glad we got that one out there. I was like, wait, there's no, I was expecting the pushback. So it's great. Thank you so much, guys. It's very confident.
I think the last one, that's 4 we just did, right?
Yeah.
Fifth one, I would just say, I don't know, again. And I think this kind of comes out and sometimes people are like, roll their eyes already. But that he is willing to lead. That looks different. Like that doesn't mean necessarily that it's like a one size fits all where this is what leadership looks like in a relationship.
Yes.
But I think that he's willing, it kind of comes with humility, it comes with community, all these things, they do stack on top of one another, but like that he's willing to step out in vulnerability to lead well. And
I think when we say lead though, there's like categories underneath it.
Yeah,
because
totally.
the idea is like,
on that.
Yeah, because the idea is like, hold on, why did I get all passionate all of a sudden? But the idea is,
this is why I started it because I knew everyone was going to get amped.
if we're gonna say they need to lead well, I think first and foremost under leadership is great communication.
Come on now,
right? So like, ladies, you want to find a guy that isn't confusing to the best visibility. I recognize that I've said things that have been very confusing to my wife while we were dating, and I'm sometimes, as much as I like to think I'm like really good with my words. Sometimes I do miscommunicate. But the idea is that I'm willing to at least have the conversation. I'm willing to be forward first, right? I'm not like, oh, I want to avoid this conversation because I'm afraid that like that might ruin something or whatever, right? Like a lot of times in my like sphere of influence with students, oftentimes like, well, I didn't want to bring it up
Yeah.
because I didn't want to lose her as a friend.
I think that's one of the hardest things on the girl's side to hear is like, if you get to the point where you bring something up and they're like, oh yeah, I was debating bringing that up. And I'm like, okay, but
Daggers.
all we hear is like that we weren't valuable enough for you
Yeah,
to
have the conversation.
have that conversation. And so, but I'm acknowledging this from the side of, I feel like I have a lot of empathy for the guys where I'm just like, that's hard. Like
It is.
it's really hard to be the one that's asked to step out in vulnerability and risk rejection, all these things. You don't, please hear me. You don't have to do it perfectly. Being on the receiving end of that, I think even if you're like stumbling through it,
I feel, yeah, the effort
if you
matters.
try,
Just have the
I'm like, I'm
conversation.
just sitting there like, oh,
Yeah, keep
good job.
going. That's really
I know
sweet.
that's not everyone, but James, you look like you have thoughts.
James got thoughts.
I mean, I know I don't have thoughts necessarily. I mean, I just the whole topic is it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because leadership is never easy. But I
Totally.
think that leading, and you said you can lead in many different ways.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've been contemplating, thinking, learning is if you are going to lead in whatever capacity that is, you have to be ready to receive arrows. You have to be ready to receive criticisms and know that what you say and what you do is always being scrutinized. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if you're on the correct side of it or not. There's always going to be somebody or some girl in this scenario that has feelings one way or the other. And so I think that is where the vulnerability of a guy leading out is always terrifying.
Totally.
Because you just never know how it's going to react, how they're going to react. And then, you talk about, I don't want to lose a friend. Totally understand that. But it's a ripple effect too, because you could lose one friend and then you lose that whole circle of friends. Right?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Dang.
It's terrifying.
I think too, like, can we explain what leading in a relationship looks like between, like, I'm assuming most people listening are high school,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
It's most of our
I think
demographic.
in church we talk about men leading in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of even just defining that, because that's very different than like a marriage,
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
Or-
true.
I think what we're explaining that as in this context is like you're leading out and being the one that's willing to address a conversation and like go first in like whatever that is, like setting boundaries, being clear with what your intentions are, those kind of things. But it doesn't mean you're in charge of her. Like you're not her authority.
Yeah.
You're not the one that's like making all the decisions on your own. It's just that you're willing to step out first and be like, hey, let's have this hard conversation. Or like, I'm going to talk to a mentor about this so that there is wisdom in this circle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, I really think so. I think leading is just the idea that we're going to go first. And if we're not, if we mess up along the way, we're willing to say sorry. Like the first two, it's still first. I'm willing to say sorry first and apologize. I think when we say lead, it really is like going first, but in all the aspects.
Yeah.
And or like, hey, like I feel like I feel like the relationship should look like this. That's what I'm thinking, and then being open to that. I think it sounds like we just want our guys, ladies, and from us is just to like be honest and actually talk first.
Yeah.
You know?
Which that has to build. That's why we're talking about like them all stacking on top of each
Yeah.
other. You can't lead well if you're not like in community, pursuing the Lord, like doing all those things, because leading well, if those aren't, you can't lead well if those aren't there. Then
Yeah.
that's just leading not well.
Yeah. I think also a lot of our perspectives comes like, at least for at least for me, a lot of my perspective comes from, like from marriage, right? Like what does it look like to lead in a relationship that's like covenantal, but in realizing that it had to start from somewhere. So like what I'm practicing ideally is what's going to get, continued up, into like where this relationship will go. So if I'm not willing to like stumble and try my best or like lead well and treat the other person with the same respect that they are image bearers of Christ and all those things, then I've missed the mark. So I need to start working towards that. You know what I mean? So
And knowing too, I think like for girls, like we've got to recognize, I mean, I know for me, I have my own fear of rejection, right? And realizing that it's really hard for a guy to like share feelings because of fear of rejection, right? We talked about like not wanting to lose a friend or whatever. And so I think for us ladies to like have grace in those moments too of, if it is hard for him to just spit it out and lead in that way, like, I don't know, encouraging him in some way. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
I don't know the situation for each person, but I just think of like helping him out in some ways, obviously not holding his hand and doing the leading for him. But I just think, what does it look like to have grace in that moment? What does it look like to kind of just understand that everyone has their own fears of different things. And so not demanding perfection, but just having grace in that too.
I agree.
good.
I
But
think
not too much
Gentlemen,
grace.
you are seen.
you're doing great. I also think the last one, I just want to throw out here because sometimes, because these can get really heavy and get really deep. And it's because we care about the heart, right? Of our students, even ourselves, even recognizing that like in relationship heart, like it's really hearts. And
Heart
so
over hype.
it can end up being like damaging. So we're really focused about beneath the layers because so much of culture is focused outside of that. But I do feel like one trait, ladies, is you gotta have fun.
Oh yeah.
Please.
Like have
Lots of fun.
fun. Like he should be easygoing. Like he should make you laugh.
You
like,
guys should laugh so much.
like laugh
That's
all
so
the time.
good.
Like it should be good.
That's
It shouldn't be wrapped up with constant like drama or constant conversations or constant, like you don't know what's going on. It should just be fun. And I think if we miss that, then, I feel like it'd be a really sad, really deep, really intellectual relationship,
That's
Yeah.
really good. I think that you said that because I know just even like just thinking through different girls who are just so wrapped up in like doing things right.
Yeah.
And that's true. Like it's great that there's the fact that high schoolers are actually trying to date in a way that honors the Lord is amazing.
Yes.
It's a
I
win.
was not that way in high school. And so recognizing, that's awesome. But I think that's the first thing that kind of gets lost when you're so worried about like, is God going to be upset with this? Or are we doing things right? Or whatever is like, just have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
It's good.
laugh together.
Laugh together. That's the tagline. That's
Laugh
good.
together.
Well, we're going to have so much more to keep unpacking in the next episode, talking about gentlemen, what to look for in a girl, or ladies, if you're listening to it, what characteristics that you should see in your own life. But we are out of time for today.
Yes.
So thank you guys for being here. We're so excited to see you guys in 2 weeks with the next
for
one.
having
But yeah, share this with a friend. Don't send it to the guy you like and be like, this is you. That's good. All right.
Oh,
well,
gosh,
we'll see you guys next time.
All right. See you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Well StudentCast. As always, don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about us. For more information about the Well Student Ministries, visit thewellcommunities.org/students.